Welcome to the Generative Age,
a podcast that explores the rapidly evolving world of generative AI and its impact on education.
Guided by EdTech Director, author, and NICE board member Alana Winnick. We are joined by experts and practitioners in the field who are shaping the discourse of artificial intelligence in the classroom.
Whether you're an educator, administrator, technology leader, or simply interested in the future of education, join us on this journey through the Generative Age, powered by NICE. The NICE annual conference is coming up in just a few short weeks. I'm involved in so many exciting things this year, including the AI Playground, the TED Talk program. I'll be doing some live podcasting. I have a collaboration with one of our former guests, Ken Sheldon, and so much more. So check the schedule, and I hope to see you there. It has been quite a bit of time since I've given you some field updates, so I have a lot in store for you. So first, we'll start off with Adobe. They've recently released Adobe Firefly Video, which allows you to turn your typed text into video. This is awesome. So for people that are not good at video editing, this will allow them to create things that they never would have been able to create. And I also see this really impacting writing, especially in students who are developing their writing. I've seen a drastic increase in the ability to write with the image generators, where the students want to get that perfect image. They go back and they revise and they edit, which they weren't normally doing. Now they could bring a whole story to life. That's where we're going with it. So if the technology is not able to do that right now, then that's where it will eventually end up. So that's an exciting update from Adobe. Moving on to Google. Google Gemini released Notebook LM. So I was a little bit nervous about this one, but I rest assured that I've done the research. It uses the data that lives in your drive, and it does not use that data to train the larger model. So I felt a little bit more safe about that. You can make notebooks, which are really just collections of documents and other types of media, and you can upload them right in there and make different notebooks. It allows you to interact and engage with your documents and media. You could create FAQs, study guides, a table of contents, a timeline. It goes through all your content, makes a timeline, a briefing doc, and my favorite feature, which is an audio overview feature. So at first, like I said, I was a little bit hesitant, but then I went ahead when I looked at the data privacy and security, and I went ahead and uploaded my book, and I was able to interact and engage with my own book. And a lot of really cool things came out of it. I'm going to show you a little clip of the audio overview, which to me sounds like a little podcast of two people talking about the content. It sounds very lifelike, the people feel energetic, and it's very easy to listen to. So let's take a little listen.
And it's not as clear-cut as saying, oh, you can't use AI for homework, because it's in everything. It's becoming unavoidable.
So then it becomes about how do we use it responsibly?
Yes, exactly. We need to be talking about this openly.
What are your initial thoughts?
As you can see, that sounded really awesome, really lifelike. From my perspective as the author of this document, what I thought was the most important aspects of my book, I don't necessarily think that they thought it was the same thing as I thought it was. So this just shows you that with all AI, it's really predicting, right? It's predicting the next most probable word. It's predicting what they think might be the most important thing. But that's why humans are super important in this world. I've really started noticing that the art of curation is going to be an increasingly important skill, and trusting human curators and what they're putting out. So the way that I would look at any of these is a great supplement to the content, but not a replacement for that. And this goes back to like Spark Notes when I was younger, right? We'd read the Spark Notes, but like it didn't really give you the depth of reading the actual book. So think of it like that. Moving on to OpenAI ChatGPT, they now have this version 4.0 with Canvas. It's a paid version. So if you're a paid subscriber, you can toggle from the top and say, drop down 4.0 with Canvas. No one's really talking about this one. I actually really love it because it allows you to collaborate on the writing or code. I don't really use it for code, but you can edit the output. And normally you have to copy that and paste it somewhere. And now you could just go right into the output and you can edit it and you can continue engaging with it. So I found that to be really helpful. Moving along to another big one we don't really talk about on here is Tesla. They came out with Optimus, which is a humanoid robot. So you're probably like, how is this AI? Well, we think of generative AI as outputting text or images or video. This humanoid robot can do tasks for you around the house, physical tasks in your real life. So you're giving it a prompt and the output is now an action. So that's pretty cool. I'm really excited to see where this type of AI takes us. Another model is Anthropic's Claude. So just so you know a little bit about Anthropic, back when Sam Altman got pulled out as a CEO of OpenAI and all those things went down, a lot of people left OpenAI and then they went to Anthropic. This new model allows you to control your computer. And I just want to point out this is not new. There was another contender in this space before OpenAI really came out, and it was in the educational space. It was called Merlin. I thought that I would have seen them pick up a little bit more, but in the past 2 years, yes, it's almost 2 years since OpenAI released ChatGPT, I haven't really seen it pick up. This one looks like it is agnostic and it can just control your computer and it doesn't need to be Google or Microsoft. And the technology is evolving and changing. And again, Anthropic is one of the most powerful models out there. With the employees that left OpenAI to come to Anthropic. So there's some of the top engineers in the field. And now away from the updates, and I just want to give you some news stories. These are maybe not so positive. As a data privacy officer, I'm always careful about protecting students' information, especially sensitive data such as last names. I'm constantly reminding my students and my teachers not to include sensitive information if it's not necessary. So last week when I was using ChatGPT by OpenAI, I was in complete shock when it regurgitated a student's last name in my response, and I tried prompting it to see where the information came from. I've included for you the response I received when inquiring, and it would not budge on where it got this information from, but I am 100% certain I've never used it in any of my prompts. I've never uploaded a document with this last name, and it definitely did not come from me. This is a powerful reminder of why AI literacy is critical, and we must educate our teachers and our students on both data privacy and security, as well as AI literacy. In Massachusetts, the parents of a high school senior argued to federal courts that their son was unfairly punished in school for using AI for his history research project, and they think it harmed his acceptance into an elite college. So there's a lawsuit going on around that between the parents and the school district. And this goes back to a point that I consistently say we really need to rethink the what, the why, and the how. What we're asking our students to do, why we're asking them to do it, and how we're assessing it. In a world with AI, where the AI can literally complete your assignments for you in seconds, we really need to rethink these things. We can't be turning our back on it or punishing students for this. I'm actually writing a whole article for NASSP that should come out in February around this. So if a student does use it, we need to really think about why did they use it. There's many other reasons why students cheat, and we need to address the root of the problem. Only thing we can really do is control what's going on in our classrooms and our schools. So I give you that power to go back and reassess the what, the why, and the how. This one is a really horrible one. Unfortunately, a 14-year-old Florida boy took his own life, and his mother said that it was because he became completely obsessed with his character AI chatbot. It caused him potentially to take his own life. There are a lot of articles about this, and they're saying, can AI be blamed for this? I'll post an article and I'll let you create your own thoughts around this. It's devastating and horrible. I had an in-depth conversation with Vicki Davis on anthropomorphizing AI, so definitely go back and check out that episode. Also tune in to the episode live at ISTE, where I gathered insights from a wide range of perspectives. There's a lot to say about this. I think it's a real problem that we need to address, and this is why it's so important to educate students about AI in school before they graduate and it's too late. So this is your call to action to make sure that you go back and you educate your students and your teachers about artificial intelligence. Now let's move on to a more positive note. The reason why we're all here. I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Dr. Merritt Moore. This episode's a little less traditional than most of my episodes. If this is the first time you're listening, I don't typically interview in this style, and I think you'll understand why. So without further ado, let's move on to the main event. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm going to introduce you, but I'm sure there's so much more that I'm missing. So, for everyone listening, this is Dr. Merritt Moore. She is a professional ballerina, a quantum physicist, an astronaut, an educator. She refers to herself as the dancing dork. She puts the A in STEAM, and she's the definition of a true innovator. You are an inspiration to everyone, and especially really young girls who really adore you and look up to you. So we thank you so much for being here. And is there anything I left out of your titles? Did I miss any titles?
Oh, that's good. That sounded great.
So I live in New York City. That's where I am right now. And I get to meet some pretty cool people. And you are by far one of the coolest people I've ever met in my life. So I just want to let you know that. And when I met you at ISTE, before I got there, I was looking at the keynotes and I saw Ethan Mollick. And to me, it was like, oh my God, I'm going to see Ethan Mollick. And I was like geeking out about it. And after it was over, I wrote a whole blog and I said that I didn't, research you. I didn't know you. And after I had seen you, like, I don't get emotional. I don't like get those feelings. But after watching you perform, it was like I got goosebumps. And it was like this beautiful symbiotic relationship between like humans and technology. And it just embodied like everything that I speak of. So you are really someone that I aspire to be like and share with the teachers and the students in
Oh
my
my gosh,
district.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. It takes a lot of hard work sometimes, and so when I hear something so heartfelt, it means a lot to me. So thank you.
You're
Thanks a lot.
welcome. For people that don't know you, I think that your story is so moving. So would you mind just going through your story and telling us about how you got to where you are today?
I certainly can. I grew up in LA, and I I took my first dance class around 12, 13. And I fell in love with it. I was someone who didn't speak a lot as a kid. And so finding movement with my body was something that it felt so great. But the thing is with ballet, people were like, oh, you started way too late, though. You'll never become a professional ballet dancer, no matter how much work you put in. And so in my head, I was like, so what's the point of working hard? Like, what's the point of working hard for anything if I can't pursue my dreams? But at the same time, I also had a love for math and science, and I had I hadn't had much experience with physics, but I just had an idea that, oh my gosh, it brings in math and the physical world and all the mysteries of the universe, and you're building new technology with it. I just already knew it was like love at first sight, even before I saw it. It was just, I knew I was going to be hooked. So I decided I applied for colleges and I got into Harvard to study physics. And that was super intimidating because I was
Yeah,
in
I'm
class
sure.
filled with the physics Olympiads who'd been doing it since they were 12. And here I was being like, I know I love it,
Right.
but I felt like I was being judged based on each day, being like, oh, can you pick it up right away? And there was this sentiment, like I felt like, oh my gosh, if I didn't show brilliance right away, people were like, this isn't for you. Already like female in science and in physics, there was already this like feeling perhaps that maybe I shouldn't be in the room. And if I didn't show brilliance right away, which I mean, that's a very hard thing to
Yeah.
do as well, like overnight. But also at Harvard, there was, I thought I was quitting dance, but there was this amazing opportunity. There's this student-run group, a ballet company. And also Harvard doesn't have a dance department, but it had, I forgot what they call it exactly, but they also had opportunities to perform. And so by performing, that gave me so many opportunities. One, it got me hooked again. And because I had this footage, I could then audition for companies. And so my sophomore year at Harvard, I was 19. And I don't know, because something went in my head where I was like, it's now or never. It's like this year, or I'm never going to dance because I'm going to be so old. I mean, the irony is that I'm now 36 and still dancing professionally. So I'm looking back at myself being like, oh my gosh, I was silly. But there was that fire within me. And so I would every Thanksgiving break, Memorial break, Martin Luther King break, Christmas break, I'd be flying somewhere to audition. and I did 25 auditions that year, got rejected 24 times.
Yeah, that's a lesson for everyone listening, right?
Is like you have to go through the failures. There's no one who's ever created anything brilliant on their first go.
No.
Whether it's like writing, whether it's a manuscript, whether it's a book, whether it's art, like a painting, there's never a first go that's been brilliant. Right?
No,
Like,
never. No.
no, they were
Failure
the
stands
best
for
students.
first attempt in learning. That's what I tell my teachers and students.
That's such a good quote because it's
Yeah.
100%, right? It's
Yeah.
you learn, and I learned so much, and I loved the auditions. And it was interesting because I could see people getting rejected and getting really impacted by it and seeing their self-esteem and their ego and everything kind of crumble, and they wouldn't want to do it again. But in my head, I was like, well, one, at each audition, I'm improving so much. Two, it's just such amazing life lessons. But long story short is I got into Zurich Ballet, but then decided to be a good physicist, go back to Harvard. But then, so I completely quit. And then like a year later, I started taking class again. And then you get hooked again. And there's an opportunity with Boston Ballet. So I took time off with Boston Ballet. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to be a good physicist. Quit, go back and study physics. But then there was another opportunity at Jose Mateo. And so then I was like, okay, but now I'm going to my PhD to Oxford and I'm going to be a good physicist. But then there's English National Ballet. And after that, there was Norwegian National Ballet. And then there was COVID and I started dancing with a robot. And that led to performing around the world with the robot. And then I got invited by NYU Abu Dhabi to be a professor and teach this creative robotics and tech class, which has been so much fun. So
Yeah.
right now I juggle, so far I've been doing that past 2 years. I've been doing that for a couple months, dancing with Boston Ballet for a couple months, and then dancing with the robot a couple months in the year. So it's been a journey.
Yeah. That's so cool. I didn't know that you still were dancing with a professional ballet post-pandemic. So I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. Boston Ballet the past 2 years. And then I've been doing Sugar Plum with Jose Mateo Ballet Company also the past 2 years.
When are you going to be in Boston again? Because I live pretty close, so maybe I'll come see you.
And also I'm going to be in New York. So I fly to
When?
Boston this coming Thursday, I
Oh,
think.
wow.
And then I'm going to be in New York
Oh, we
for
could
a
have done
Zoom
this in
festival.
person. We could have done a live one.
Oh.
It's
We
okay.
can do a follow-up. We can do it again.
The energy of like real life sometimes is just
Yeah.
so magical. So can you tell everyone about that program you run at Abu Dhabi? Because I think that's such a
Yeah.
magical program. And everyone that's listening, if they could create something like this, we have a lot of STEAM educators, and I think they can bring stuff like this to their classrooms.
I teach whatever I kind of want to learn as well. So the class it's called Creative Robotics in Tech. So for instance, on the first day, I'll bring in a collaborative robot, a cobot, normally a universal robot. And it's quite fairly easy to do a initial program with it, initial movement with it. So the main thing for me is I want to provide a space where the students feel they can be completely creative, meaning that they can fail, they can succeed, they can have a good idea, they can have a bad idea. And then also I want them to build that confidence. A lot of them haven't seen a robot before. They haven't programmed. But in that first day, I introduce them to a collaborative robot. It's quite easy. And also nowadays we have babies knowing how to play it, use an iPad.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, the bar is quite high. I'm like, like, if we've got babies who can do an iPad, you can do this. This is no problem.
Yeah.
And so I leave them in a room, kind of. I have them in groups and I say, look, come up with some idea, be creative. And the ideas they come up with in 2 hours is phenomenal. So they'll put a light on a robot and turn off all the lights, like the room lights, and do a long exposure as the robot moves around. Or they'll put a paddle on the robot for it to play tennis, or they'll make a skit so it's like pulling off someone's blanket and then giving them coffee, and they'll or like put a paintbrush on it. And then the next day I'll have another, like what I do in the beginning is I throw them new technology every single day. So then we'll play with their software called Ableton to compose music and use a little bit of AI with that. I'll teach them pose estimation, and we'll talk a little bit about machine learning and convolutional neural networks. We'll play with Arduino. So the main thing is I keep throwing them new tech so that towards the end of the class, they're like, oh, okay. It's really daunting in the beginning, but 2 to 3 hours in, they can be super creative with it.
Right.
And so that no matter what they encounter, they always have that confidence that, oh, okay, we can figure this out. And there'll be a robot from China that doesn't have a manual in English, and we'll use ChatGPT to figure it out, right?
I
Like,
love that.
so we just have a lot of fun. And then they create these amazing projects that are then presented at the Louvre in Abu Dhabi. So one group created this augmented reality where you enter a frame and it's Jackson Pollock painting in 3D. And they wanted to create, show what's beyond the frame. Like if you were going to peer like on to the sides, right or left of the frame, like
Yeah.
where does that painting extend to?
Cool.
And yeah, they've just had so many amazing ideas, and it's so incredibly stimulating for me as well.
That's so exciting. I don't teach children anymore. I mean, I did
Mhm.
many, many years ago. Now I'm a director of technology of a school district, and I'm starting a club because I want to work with students again. I work with
Right.
adults, but I'm starting a club called the Innovation Club, and I want to do exactly what you're doing, but just, not the same age group, and give them all these opportunities to explore and create.
Right.
So that's going to start in a few weeks. I'm really, really excited about it. Okay,
Oh,
so
that's so great.
I'm going to share something with you. You kind of sped through your background, which is fine. For everyone that's listening, I have videos linked that goes through like very deeply her story. I pulled some of your videos and I shared them with fourth graders. So here they are, completely
Aw.
captivated with you, like not one noise. Like we learned about you and we studied you. And for everyone listening, I'm going to be doing this district wide for Computer Science Week in December. So if you are subscribed to my newsletter blog, then you will receive the whole lesson plan that we made around you. And we are celebrating you in my district in December.
That's so
And you'll
sweet.
be all over the walls. So I'm sure we'll send you pictures about that. So I picked these fourth graders for a reason because in this next picture, when I met you at ISTE, all the way to the right is their third grade teacher. So they were freaking out that we met you in real life. They could not imagine that we actually met.
So
And
sweet.
yeah, no, like it was like they were like, "What? You and Miss Lombardo met her?" They were freaking out. Then I told them I was actually going to meet with you today. I asked them 4 questions, and I'm going to share this with you so you could get all of their
Oh,
responses too. But
yeah.
really quickly, I just compiled this little visual for you, of what some of them said. So,
Oh,
so that if you're listening, it's like dreams come true if you believe in yourself. She inspired me to live my own dreams. She inspired me to do science. And there's all these wonderful things up here. I like to give them options. Not everyone, and as you know, likes to express themselves in one way. So they could do text, they could do video, they could do audio. They got to choose their medium. So for the ones that felt comfortable doing video, I compiled a little video for you.
I'm gonna cry.
Hello, Dr. Moore. Your smile is beautiful.
What surprised me about Dr. Merritt Moore when I watched the video about her is how she coded all of them robots.
I think the message in Dr. Merritt Moore's story is that you could do anything you want with the right courage and the right positivity. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Never give up.
You didn't stop when it got hard.
If you try hard enough, you can do anything. Like you. Dr. Merritt Moore has inspired me to follow my dreams and become a swimmer. So I think I'll be able to build a robot because you inspired me, so thank you.
And I wonder what else she's going to discover.
Oh my goodness. For such sweetness. That's really, I'm gonna try to pull it together for this podcast and then.
No, you really are an inspiration. I genuinely really mean that. And so then I told them, what do you want to ask her? So here's some student created questions for you. Oh, so I also asked some older students, but we'll get to who they are in a minute. These younger ones are from my district.
The work that you've done and your career is really inspiring to me. So I had a few questions that I wanted to ask you. So my first question goes a little bit farther back. What was your high school experience like? And at what point did you decide that you really wanted to become a physicist? Also, did you focus on ballet as much as physics?
Because she's very ambitious. She juggles a lot. So I think she's trying to figure it out.
Yeah, high school and the beginning part of college for sure were the hardest years because it was the years where I had the most doubts. One, because people were telling me that it wasn't possible to dance professionally,
Right.
that maybe physics wasn't meant for me. Doing both was impossible. So I was putting in tons of hard work, not knowing if any of them were going to work out, let alone both. And I had to work hard for many years. So that, like, high school and college were definitely, I think, tricky in that sense because you have to put in tons of hours and tons of work. And sometimes you just feel so lost and confused and not knowing. And you kind of have to find those little, make those little goalposts that make it enjoyable and find ways that you're going to find happiness no matter if you get rejected or not. Like, it's not dependent on being accepted or rejected or, is succeeding in competitions, etc. So I think that one's really hard. And knowing as well, I think what made it fun was realizing it's an experiment on, and I'm the experiment. Being like, oh, okay, sometimes we're gonna do chunks of time where I'm studying 45 minutes and then stretching for 5 minutes and then studying for 45 minutes, because that's something that I had read. And now I'm gonna try someone else's schedule where they sit down for 3 hours with just a what, and then test out their method, or I'll test out someone else's method. And sometimes I would try to do an audition with a ton of pressure, and I realized I don't do particularly well if I put extra pressure on myself.
Right.
So then it was like, okay, how do I talk to myself so that I alleviate pressure? So it's like, okay, this is practice. This audition is practice for another big audition or when I'm performing in front of 10,000 people. So I would always, because then it would alleviate the pressure in that moment. Because I'm like, oh, it's only 2 people and a room filled with students. This is not 10,000 people. It's easy. So it's that part, I think, in high school is finding out how to have fun, experimenting and testing and knowing there isn't just one way of doing it. But I do believe in putting in the hours. And I tell my students, I always tell them, I'm like, work hard now because you'll just get lazier as you get older. So like,
Do you think you've gotten lazier? I don't know how. You're so ambitious.
I have fun with it. Well, I mean, when I was younger, every single hour was scheduled out for myself. Like, I was really pushing hard. And I think it helps because then you don't feel like you're having to chase. You feel a little bit ahead of the game. And then there's a little bit more flexibility. So right now, I think every hour of my day is not scheduled at all. And I think it's because I put in all the hours when I was younger.
Let's hear the next question.
Did you make all of your robots from scratch?
They were very curious about that. Do you
Oh
build your robots? A lot of them asked that.
Not. I feel like we're going to disappoint. So there's a company called Universal Robots, and they provide these amazing robots, and especially the ones that are bigger. So with my students, we work on smaller type of robots with like an Arduino and some coding. But when I'm doing the performances and it's a big robot, I use something that's already made.
Okay, next question.
My next question is, what made you interested in robots and using a robot for your ballet performances? Because I know your main fields are quantum physics and ballet, and those fields kind of don't have a lot of robotics in them.
Such a good question. So this happened during the pandemic, and all of my dancing gigs got canceled. I was like, I can't dance with humans.
Yeah.
I thought, but robots don't get COVID. So maybe we program this robot to dance with me. I need some sort of companion to dance with. And so that's when I went into robotics. And the physics background really helps because I'd spent 9 years in a lab at that point, constantly with new technology. And in the physics lab, you're thrown this device and like another high-tech device that aren't made to work together. And there's no manual and it's totally cutting edge. And there's no one to ask. Like there's just no instructions in a physics. Like you try and sometimes you create a model and you hope and you cross your fingers that something's going to work, but it's really quite challenging. Whereas with a robot, it's meant to be sold, it's meant to be bought, there's a manual, there are people you can call. So having that background made working with a robot not feel daunting at all.
A lot of them were first confused. They were expecting a robot that looked like a human, and it didn't. And I saw you dance with it. And so, I mean, I personally enjoyed that it didn't look anything like a person, because I think for me, that's what made it so beautiful.
Yeah.
But was there a reason that you didn't choose one that looked like a person?
I prefer as well the ones that don't look human. I think when you start going to the human side, one, we enter into like the uncanny valley where it gives like a really creepy feeling. Number two, they actually aren't the ones that have 2 legs and 2 arms aren't as fluid and aren't as compatible to work with humans at the moment. So maybe in the future. The third thing is because it's a different shape and different form, I feel that it allows for so many more possibilities to explore. So if it looked kind of human-esque, then I would have to work with that as the story. Or if it was the dog robot, like that one's challenging because it's just such a dog.
Yeah.
Can't have it be anything other than a dog.
Yeah.
Whereas the robot that I work with, for me, like especially when I put the light on it, it's really a chance for me to be able to dance with, like very personally. So I get to dance with my memories. I get to dance with my hopes and my dreams and my fears. I get to dance with people who have passed away and are really close to me. So in that way, I prefer this non-human form, but we shall see. I'm up for exploring all different robots.
I love that. You don't know where your future might bring you, right?
Exactly.
The next questions are about the future. So
Okay.
they were the little girls especially were very, very, very obsessed with this.
Love watching you perform, but now I have some questions. What made you think of being an astronaut from being a ballerina?
Such good questions. So during my PhD, and it was such an interesting time that it all came together. So most of my life, I'd been trying to just be a physicist or trying just to be a ballet dancer, trying to hide one from the other. I was like, it was just constantly trying to separate them. And towards the end of my PhD, though, I was thinking like, why not both? Like I've now done this for over a decade.
What if and why not, right?
Yeah, so what if and why not? So that was the main question at the moment, was like, why not both? And at that moment as well, there's this application to be part of this BBC Astronauts Do You Have What It Takes program. So I got to go undergo astronaut selection training. I'm not part of NASA or ESA. It was like astronauts, it was an experience of how it's like a survivor type of program. And so like they flew us to Germany to work with the simulator to dock the Soyuz to the International Space Station. We got to manipulate the actual Mars rover that Tim Peake had used. We got thrown into a dunker and dumped upside down in the water, and we had to break through the window and go out. Like we got thrown into a helicopter. I mean, the experiences were crazy and it was so much fun. But that opened my eyes and I was like, whoa, this is a profession that isn't at career fairs.
Right.
I forgot this existed. And I was like, and it combines the physicality and the sort of dorky physics side that I love.
Yeah.
do one profession. And so after that, there was a application to be one of the 8 artists to go around the moon with Yusaku Misawa on SpaceX Starship. I was one of the final 16 selected for that. Not the final 8, but the whole mission like a month ago got canceled, unfortunately. But I don't know, we're getting space. I'm putting it out in the universe.
You're gonna do. That's actually the next question. But wait, before I forgot to tell you, so I was fascinated with space as a kid, like obsessed, fascinated. I wanted to be an astronaut. I begged my parents to send me to space camp. Something about the universe, it's just like, and
Yeah.
actually, so my logo, if you look in the bottom corner, is this light bulb, and in the light bulb is like the idea, right? And inside is this galaxy. So for me, I was struggling so much, like, what does artificial intelligence look like? It doesn't look like anything. But what I came to conclusion was like, because I'm obsessed with space, like it's like infinite ideas. It's unlimited possibilities. It's whatever you want to make it. And when you look up at the sky and the stars, it's like that, like you don't even we only know so much of what's out there. So I think I don't know, it's always fascinated me my whole life.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, it is, right? Like that's the part that's so interesting about looking out into space. And what I think triggered my love for physics as well is my dad used to take my sister and I out on our balcony and we just stare into the stars. And he'd have these like constellation maps and we tried to find like,
Where did you grow up?
well, they're not those things. But he would ask questions like, do you think what is infinite? Like, what are infinite galaxies? Was there one Big Bang? Were there multiple? Do you think there's life out there? Like, what's dark matter? Like, all of these sorts of questions. And it just, I mean, just staring out in the sky, like, offers so many unknown questions and
Where did
mysteries.
you grow up? Like that, could you really see the sky? Like, was there light?
Oh, no, I could only see the big, I was in LA.
Okay.
But even that, it's like, I mean, at night we were in an area where it wasn't super lit, so we could see stars, but not compared to, I mean, people in like Arizona or Colorado having these magical experiences with the whole
Yeah.
Milky Way.
Yeah.
That wasn't happening in LA.
So on the space track, here's the next one.
My question for Dr. Merritt Moore is, how will she dance in space?
Because we think you're going to do it. So we want to know how.
I love it. I was thinking it would be so much fun to use AI as well to sort of simulate, because you can use it to like simulate the human body and in different scenarios, but also say, okay, what does a pirouette look like up there? Like, what will a leap look like? Like, and it probably will need a new sort of language and terminology
Yeah.
because there's not going to be like a tendu right and a tendu left.
Yeah.
Because you're like out floating in the middle of space. So it's gonna have to have like a whole new terminology and language to it and movement, and it's gonna be super fascinating.
Have you ever been in a zero gravity space to practice ballet?
No, it has to happen.
Do you think you'll do that before you go, or you think you're just going to wing it and go and figure it out?
Oh, good question. Oh, whichever. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can see it going both ways.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And here's the last student question for now.
Okay.
How do you feel about doing all 3 jobs?
Like you do it all. Like, right? You have like, I don't know, say more than 3. They just want to know, how do you do it all and how do you feel about it?
That's a good question. I think I find like passion and joy are incredible accelerators. It's like the Mario Kart thing, when you hit the mushroom and like you go super fast. Like anytime I'm with a coach who's super inspiring or in this environment or I feel super inspired by something, I will just go for it 100%. And especially if it's giving me joy, I'll just deep dive into it. Because I know there's a moment where I'll need to rest, and there's a time where sometimes we feel unmotivated. So anytime I feel that energy boost, I just go for it. And I think the more one does that, the more energy boosts one gets, and the more stimulated I get by, a brief encounter, a brief conversation, this podcast, this talk with you. Like, it's like motivating and inspiring, and is going to give me another boost. Yeah. And then there's certain things that I've learned over the years, like how I organize my life. I use Notion app that I can't live without. And then there's certain routines, like the book, it's called Atomic Habits.
I love that.
It's such a good book. And I read it early 20s. And so from then I really worked on creating habits. So a lot of the work that for other people might feel like work, it's a habit. I don't even think about it.
But if you must be traveling a bit. So is it hard to develop these routines when you're traveling?
No, I mean, traveling. Yeah, I was in, oh my gosh, it was like Monday, I was in London, Tuesday, Paris, Wednesday, Berlin,
Yeah,
Thursday, London and Madrid. Like, it's chaos. I'm in USA next week, Abu Dhabi the next. No, but I think I've had a habit also with the traveling. So like for me, even if I can't get to an exercise class, well, class pass is great because then you can do Pilates or yoga. There's a ballet class almost any city. And if not, one can walk. And that's such a great way for exercise and thinking. So that's daily. Boom.
I love walking. I just got a walking treadmill desk thing, and I walk
Oh.
very slow. One day I got like 19,000 and then 23,000. I've only had it less than a week. I just got it Monday. It's life-changing. Like, you should check this out. You just put on a really low speed, and while you're doing your emails or while you're, and there's a lot of studies that show that movement helps you learn and retain information. And so why wouldn't we be moving while we're doing our work? And I just do it super slow, so it's not really affecting or impacting anything. And I highly recommend it. I mean, I've only used it 5 days now, but it's life-changing.
But I do find like that extra little movement. So another trick is the big gym ball is sitting on that, using that as a chair. Because for me, it's like sitting stagnant on a chair, like affects my back. But that little movement,
Yeah.
and especially, I don't know, like for my brain, I need the extra stimulation in order to focus.
Same. But I shake my leg and people think I'm nervous. And I'm like, I'm not nervous. It's just how I get my energy out so I can focus on you.
Yes, yes.
I have some more questions. So you've broken a lot of barriers and a lot of biases in your worlds, right? So like from being a ballerina to being a scientist. So like, tell us what that was like in your life, just, being a walking like bias breaker. And then part 2 is I want to know, because I know all the biases you broke, but like which ones do you actually fit? Like, there's a left brain and there's a right brain. People think that scientists are very like organized and logical, and artists are very like more disorganized and messy. And like, which ones do you fit in?
Right. Interesting. So the beginning one, I think I love to go what I call submarine mode,
Mhm.
is going under the water, like going to work mode, kind of isolating myself, because I do notice I get affected by the outside influences for sure. And I I don't want those impacting me. And so often I'll just work isolated. Like sometimes I go into a studio and just work on my own, or I go in the lab at night when no one's there to just work on my own. And because then I kind of have the freedom to like mess up or take it slow or do it my own way. And that I find very helpful, because it's hard not to shut everyone's voices out. Like, it's we can do it to a certain extent, but sometimes it's challenging. So that I found helpful. And I think over time as well, one gets a bit more confident in one's beliefs. I mean, like, this is okay. People say it's impossible. I have a feeling it's going to be possible. We're going for it, right? Like, and sometimes it wasn't exactly confidence. So I think everyone also has different personality traits, and mine is, if you took me up in a plane and told me to jump, I'm not necessarily going to be really confident, but I'll be fearless and I'll just jump anyways. So that's generally what happens when people meet me, I'm not like this most like confident person, but you put me in a scary situation, I'll do it. Like, but I just know that that's my, like, that's my strength is I'll do things that are scary.
What if, yeah, that's a good question. So what if someone's scared of something?
Yeah.
What advice would you give them to overcome that and just try it and do it?
It's kind of the cliche stuff that are in books that are so powerful though, and really changed my life. So it's that, really understanding, okay, what's the worst that's going to happen if you get that failure, right? Or if you're really worried about the failure, how then do you change it in your brain so that it's a positive? So then I'll change it in my brain saying, okay, I get to pat myself on the back when I get 9 failures in a row, right? Like, and I'm really learning from it.
You're celebrating the failures.
Yeah, to celebrate it and for me, I'm way more proud of my failure resume, quote unquote, because it shows all the times that I've tried and then gotten back up. And that's such a strength. And I do credit my mom for this because she would always tell me saying like, oh, when you get an A or like you win something, it's like, that's cool, but you're gonna forget it. Everyone else is gonna forget. Like, she's like, but when you fail and you get back up, she's like, that's a muscle that you then strengthen and it makes you invincible for the rest of your life because you're never gonna get stopped or you're never going to get stopped from a failure. You're just going to keep on going. So it's those aspects, or like, I think really doing some self-analysis of like, why is one afraid? Is it afraid of judgment? Okay, then let's understand this judgment because honestly, people are busy and they're not going to remember you. So
they're gonna remember you though. They're gonna remember you.
But even if I post on social media, I do think I'm like, there's so much stuff on social media. If it's a good post or a bad post, people are gonna forget it in 5 seconds. Like it's gonna be insignificant, definitely within an hour. So then it eliminates any sort of like hesitation or worry because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Right. If one puts it actually in perspective of like, yeah. And my mother, bless her, she used to tell me, she's like, Merritt, you're very special, but only to mommy and daddy. Like no one else is really. And so it's so touching to see little kids.
My students think you are, for sure.
They're so sweet. It is very sweet. But I think it also then allows one to feel more free to make mistakes. Be like, yeah.
We all make mistakes, right? Even Dr. Merritt Moore makes mistakes.
Oh, daily.
I feel like the word innovation gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
What does innovation mean to you?
Interesting. So, because I think innovation and creativity are similar and different as well.
Yeah.
So, but maybe more similar than different. Sometimes it's just bringing in different ideas in a different way that hasn't been explored before. I think is also interesting, in particularly with this young students, right? Is often we think that kids are the most creative. And it's a question of like, so why does that creativity leave?
Oh, that's a big question. Why do you think it leaves?
I had this great conversation with a friend, a fellow artist, and it's interesting to think if it's perhaps shame, that the experience of shame closes one's desire to experiment and to try new things. because as human nature, we want to be part of a community, we want to fit in. So anytime one feels shame, I think it deters future creative and innovative thoughts and practices. So yeah, the playfulness as well, the lack of playfulness. I think nowadays we're obsessed with, trying to find the correct formula for life and the formula for fitness and the formula for like,
Yeah.
gosh, God, like there's a step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for everything. I think it eliminates our desire for wanting certainty. Yeah, it takes away from possible innovative ideas.
And bringing that down to being in education, you're an educator and all of that. I think for me, what you were saying made me think of myself as a student, and I strive for perfection. What was a formula for an A? I want to follow the formula for an A. And if I did this whole talk about, I called it the academic parrot, and I figured out that if I literally, I'm going to use your words because I quoted you on one of the next slides, regurgitate what the teacher says to you, then you're going to get an A. But being innovative and creative and thinking outside the box, you might not necessarily get an A. You said memorize this textbook, regurgitate on an exam, and basically we're just training our students like machines. Yeah, that really stuck with me. And even when we were doing, I asked the students to do those questions for you. One of them said to me, "What's a sentence starter?" And I was like, "What's a sentence starter? It's whatever you want it to be. You can dream it up." Right. And I think I guess a question for you is like, how do we break this pattern from training students like robots? And how do you, as a professor, really empower your students to innovate?
Well, if I look at education, I think that there has been so much emphasis on answering questions, right? And to get it right. Like there's 4 options. You need to pick the one that is the correct one, right? And nowadays we've got Siri and Alexa, you can ask it any question, it's going to answer it correctly. So I think for the most innovative ideas is training students how to ask good questions. And I think, everyone, sometimes we's like, oh, every question's a good question. That's not true.
Oh, it's not. I always say if the question's Googleable, it's not a good question to ask your students. And now I say if an assignment is AI-able, it's not a good assignment. We really need to rethink what we're asking of our students and why we're asking them to do it. And I've been taking more traditional assignments and transforming them more into, like, for an example, instead of a persuasive essay, they do TED Talks and they get up in front of the community and they have to persuade the audience, their parents, the community, to build something in our community. And so that's way cooler than write a persuasive essay. Or instead of a biography, like let's say they were studying Dr. Merritt Moore, instead of a biography, we made the Perseverance Pod, because we all listen to podcasts, like I'm a podcaster. And they would have to do 2 episodes. One is how you, Merritt Moore, persevered through a challenging time. And then the second episode would be how they persevered through a challenging time and connected to you. And they had to interview each other. So they're in all these like interview techniques and active listening. And that's, I think, if you ask a kid to write a persuasive essay or a biography, ChatGPT can literally do it. So I think we need to rethink what and
Oh
what.
my gosh, those are great assignments. Okay, we're gonna have a really super long chat. We're we're gonna hang out and
Yeah,
just
we should. You should
I
let me
love
know
it.
when you're here. I'm so excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like my mission. I was a little bit scared to like be a speaker. I never like aspired to be one. And then I realized like I have a voice, and if I could advocate for change for the students, and I think you see that I really care about them so much.
Yeah.
And I feel like a strong, like compelling, like something is compelling me to like advocate for change for them, because my hopes and dreams is that every student has the opportunities that you had to really explore their passions, explore their dreams, and not be told, this is what you do in 3rd grade, this is what you do in 4th grade,
Right.
this is what you do, and then you go to college, and then you get a job, and and you listen to your boss and you do exactly what your boss says, right? That's what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. And I like, and you're such a great example because like one can see that you have such a compelling dream that then makes you overcome any doubts or fears that you might have been telling yourself before. And I think that's also so important is like spending time for students or anyone on articulating that dream for oneself and the motivation and the why that's going to be not just cool for you, but like helpful for other people. Because then I think it eliminates all of the jibber jabber in our heads, giving us excuses and why we shouldn't do something.
Yeah, and I think school should be a safe place to fail. Like,
Mhm.
I don't like grades and I don't really love standardized tests because I always say to people like, Dr. Merritt Moore, what did you get on your 8th grade ELA test? You probably have no idea, right? And did it define you? And is it reflective of where
Yeah.
you? No. So
Yeah.
why are we like labeling these students and defining them based on that? And one of your passions, the ballet, like you don't need to be good at those things. You could excel at other things, and those things should be celebrated equally as much because they are important. We all like I live in New York City. There's Lincoln Center, right? That people spend a lot of money to go there to see the ballerinas. And that the arts is important too.
Yeah. I think even more so now for sure with this rise of technology, because
Yeah.
that human side, that creative side is what's going to differentiate us from machines.
Yes. Yeah. So how do you instill that? How do we instill that on students? Like how do we create and cultivate this environment that emphasizes that human creativity and innovation, where we still do have standardized tests?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my class, I always emphasize the questions. So it's a tedious exercise, but often I'll make them before they even start a project, write down a full page of questions. Like what, and particularly like what do you expect? Like for instance, a robot. Like what are the expectations of robot? That it's steel, that it's cold, that it's metal, that it's robotic. Right? So what would a robot look like if it was the exact opposite of that? Like those types of questions. Like, oh, okay. What about a fuzzy robot? Like what about a psychedelic robot? What about a robot that like wiggles like a worm? Right? Just to have them start exploring like what's the opposite of the stereotype.
Right.
And so I think emphasizing questions constantly, because I think every major breakthrough as well has come from a good question. It's never someone who had a plan and got there. It's always like, for instance, Einstein being like, what if I was light and looking out at the electromagnetic waves? And he came up with general relativity. Or even Elon Musk being like, are rockets reusable? Right. And then SpaceX forms. Right. So it's always like a good question that causes a great breakthrough. So I'd always emphasize that question. And then, yeah, as you said with the grade stuff, and I tell my students as well, like, if you're focused on if you get an A in this class, a B, a C, it's not going to dictate anything about your future.
No, it really
Like, if you get an A, it's not going to say you're successful in the future. And if you got a B in this class, it's not going to say that or a C, like that you're not going to be successful in the future. It has no indication on your
most
future.
of the time we don't even know where someone went to college and what grades they got. But when you go to Harvard and get a PhD from Oxford, then it's kind of part of who you are. But most of the time, it's not really defining you.
No one's looking at my grades or my, what I got in thermodynamics versus my linguistics 101. My linguistics 101 was actually my worst grade I've ever gotten.
What was the worst grade you ever got?
I think it was like a B minus in
Oh my
linguistics.
goodness.
Yeah.
You got a B or a B minus.
I know. And
You're-
it was,
Look where you are now. You're fine.
I know, like it was literally about a like gorilla giving sign language, and I just flopped it. I was a little busy. It wasn't top priority.
We're going to move on to artificial intelligence because that's really the theme of my podcast. So I have a question from a student about artificial intelligence.
Hi, my name is Amia, and I'm a 10th grader who works with Miss Winnick in an organization called Students for Innovation. Right now, we're really focused on bringing artificial intelligence into the classroom and working with teachers. When were you first exposed to artificial intelligence, and what was the first thing you used it for?
So during my PhD, I had some friends who had graduated from Oxford and were at DeepMind. So Google's department for AI. And particularly when the AlphaGo came out, and it's this AI program that plays the game Go, which is this ancient Chinese game that's existed for 2,000 years, and against the top Go player in the world, Lei Sedol. And the AI machine beat the human like 4 out of 5 times.
Wow.
And we were all staying up all night, like watching this game. And they were giving me feedback from like behind the scenes, like all the lights were turning red, like the thing was overheating, like all these aspects, like it was the stress of it was amazing. But the fact that this machine was able to play this super complicated game that's way more complex than chess was phenomenal. But what interested me the most was the commentary from the professionals who were saying, wow, that was the most creative move that they'd ever seen. Now, humans have been playing this for 2,000 years. So for them to say that is quite impressive. And then the most intriguing part I found was that the humans started training with the AI machine to play Go. And there was a research done looking at the creativity levels, could say, between 1950 and 2020 at the humans' creativity levels per move. And humans kind of got a little bit more creative, but sometimes some years like less creative, all through till 2017. And then after, there was a significant jump in creative moves. And it wasn't that humans were then copying the AI machines. They were using it as an inspiration and a way to think outside of the box in ways that we hadn't even imagined before. So it was such a great catalyst for exploring new types of ideas. And so when I started exploring with AI, I was exploring these GANs, like generative adversarial networks that were being used for images that would combine like water and bird and sky and then create this image. This is pre all the stuff we have now. But I was looking at that and kind of exploring, being like, okay, but what if I'm an expert, quote unquote, in ballet, but someone else has an expertise in hip hop or flamenco in terms of choreography and creative choreography? What if we could merge these different styles to create something that's unexpected and new and more creative? So that was my first sort of exploration and thoughts when I kind of encountered AI.
That's much different than my first encounter and most of our first encounter. That's really cool. Touch a little bit before on biases that exist and how you
Yeah.
break these barriers.
Hmm.
But we both know there's quite a scary amount of bias that are built into these LLMs. It's something that
Right.
definitely keeps me up at night. How do you think we can combat this? And is there anything that we can do as individuals?
Yeah, I think also such a good lesson as well to bring it to them, to say like, we all hold responsibility on this, right? We can't rely on anyone to be, quote unquote, the sole detective.
Right.
It's going to have to be a communal effort. And yeah, the more conversations we have on this, the better. And the more people can really spend time on the data that's fed in, right? It's all about the data that it's.
I know, but then it's being trained on like Reddit, and I'm like, really? Like,
Yeah.
why did you?
It's now we're entered a messy period, because from now on, everything that's on the internet is potentially AI,
Oh,
right?
did
So
you see that LinkedIn is now using your posts to train AI models by default? You have to turn it off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thanks for letting me know. I might do that right after this.
Happened. It
Oh,
just happened like this week. If you
yeah.
look at my LinkedIn, I posted a screenshot and directions on how to change it. Could you imagine? It's so crazy. Okay, so next question. So people are scared that AI, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but
Mhm.
people are scared that AI is going to take away human
Mhm.
creativity and critical thinking. I think you are the poster child for how it doesn't necessarily take away human creativity. What would you say to the people that are really anti-AI for this reason?
I think it's a great way to, like sometimes you need a new, fresh idea that's outside the box. And AI is such a great, I find a great tool for that. I do warn the students, especially with ChatGPT, because it's based on probability. So it'll put out the word that's most probable. And so I tell them, like, the most probable next word is the most boring sentence I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to submit an essay that's ChatGPT, like I can tell. Like I really like it tastes like cardboard because there's not much substance, there's no emotion, it's the most probable essay one could imagine, which is really lukewarm and mediocre, to be honest.
One of my students for innovation students told me that he writes after everyone, make it less cringe. Like, it's a good
I'll try that for a prompt.
make it less. So you did use AI to help you map movements to come up with new dance moves. Do you think that they were as good as your human created dance moves?
So this is an ongoing research project because it actually is quite complicated. You have to go into motion capture and then the data is quite messy. But some of the results, it's actually it's
The
the
failures. The failures.
yeah, it's the failures that are the ones that spark the most innovative ideas. And there's research done. She's a great researcher in Oslo, Benedicte, and she was exploring this, and she realized like most of the artists looking at the data were most fascinated with the glitches because that was the most inspiring part. Whereas like if it's the most predictable, they're like, like yeah, predictability isn't innovative at all. But it's a mix. Like if we're reliant on AI, then it's going to be very boring. But I think we, as humans, we want that new spark, and AI just isn't going to cut it at the end of the day, which means that we have to enhance our own creativity.
Yeah, we do. How do we enhance our creativity?
I really think it's like that freedom. I think it's that freedom also to jump around and see different ideas. Like, right, creativity is like getting different ideas and bringing them together often. Right? I think it's very rare that people come up with an entirely new idea that's never existed before. We recycle and reuse.
Remix, we're DJs in remix.
We are totally DJs. So the farther away these points can be and you bring them together, often that's going to be the most surprising and interesting. So I think not getting stuck in a tunnel and being able to jump around a little bit, but also invest enough time to have depth. Yeah, it's challenging, but I think that's the most helpful. And then it's the two things that I try to push in the class, which is creativity, meaning freedom, and confidence, that no matter what comes your way, you can learn it and you can achieve it if you put in the time and effort.
Yeah, but that's really true of the future. I think that's why it's important to teach these things, because at our core, our job really as educators is to prepare them for their future. And
Yeah.
I will be in their future, right? And their future really is like for them, maybe if they want to grow up and be a ballerina quantum physicist like you, or they want to be an author or a podcaster or a speaker, like whatever that might be, you want them to be successful. So I think they're going to fail. They're going to have to try again. And those are skills that they need to be successful.
Yeah. And it doesn't come from sitting on the couch. Like, you actually have to experience it. And the part that I also find is like, creativity means one needs to really tap into being human, which means tapping into the full range of emotions that we feel. We are going to feel anxious, we're going to feel failure, we're going to feel fear, we're going to feel sadness and happiness. Like, I think sometimes we try to avoid feeling these extreme emotions, and I think that that's detrimental for creativity and innovation. Like, you sometimes need to be pressed against the wall to come up with something super exciting. And so the more, like with the students, I encourage them, I'm like, it's okay. Feel that, because that's where your most creative idea is going to come from. Like, tap into that emotion, because that's what makes us human, and that's where the best ideas are going to come from.
Love that. It's so true. I mean, it really is. I think when you feel nervous, what do they say? It's the same feeling as feeling excited. Like, it's all the same chemical.
Yeah.
But you need to turn that scare, that fear,
Yeah.
that like adrenaline into like a happy feeling.
Right.
Next question is, how do you think that AI could change the future of science and art? So I know we talked a little bit about creativity, innovation, but how do you think it might change what we think of when we think of either science or arts or both?
It's hard to predict, I think. And that's where I feel like an experimentalist exploring this. And, I do feel a little apprehensive as well when I'm going down this field, because I don't know what's on the other side. I do hope that we keep our humanness and compassion, and that it's a tool for expression. And I think we'll just have to see where it goes.
Yeah.
But right now, when I'm working with the robots in particular, for me, it's a tool to express myself. Like a camera is a tool for those like me who cannot paint, right? But then I can take a photo of something. I'm not a photographer, but it's a way to express oneself.
Yeah. And is there anything about AI that keeps you up at night that you're kind of scared of?
Well, I think Yuval Harari said it really well, which is, right now, the way AI and social media are used, it's like for our attention. It's a bid for our attention, and it's a quite competitive space. And with AI, you just don't know where it's going to go. Like, it's going to be a competition perhaps for intimacy. And so the part of AI is, there are the apps where people are talking to AI, and it's those aspects that part keeps me up at night.
Yeah, I know that's really scary to me too. Do you listen to podcasts at all for real? Like, do you actually listen to them?
My go-to is Hard Fork.
That's what I was gonna say. Oh my goodness, because he was just on there. I was just gonna say, did you
Oh,
listen?
really? I didn't listen to that
Yeah,
episode.
that's my favorite podcast. I listen to every episode of that one. So he was just on. So that's so exciting for you.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Because I'm behind on it, so I'm excited.
So one thing about the show is I always ask the previous guest to leave a prompt for the next. So you're gonna have to start thinking of one. But the next
Oh, okay.
is about writing. So before I play it, I think it's funny to really put it in this context.
Yeah.
The teacher uses AI to create the assignment, and then the student uses AI to do the assignment, and then the teacher uses the AI to grade the assignment. Like, what's the point of the assignment, right? So just like, and then it goes back to my examples of like AI proofing the assignments. But here's a prompt from Matt Miller.
So essays and student writing seem to be in the crosshairs with artificial intelligence. It's one of the places that teachers seem to be struggling with, figuring out how this all fits the most. And so my question is, how do you see student writing changing in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and beyond in light of artificial intelligence?
Well, with myself,
Sure.
like, I think the way that it's been helpful is now I really kind of focus on the message that I'm wanting and the points that I want to be said, rather than having to focus so much on the additionally comma. I think it really needs to be encouraged that students really write, and I do this as well. Like I journal daily. Is like write without it. We can't walk around with a script on our phone.
Yeah.
One has to be able to articulate one's own thoughts. So the process of writing, I think, is still super important. And those who can write well and persuasively and have their own style, I I think they're they can go quite far. Like it's a skill that I wish I had more of, that I continually try to practice, because that communication skill is so important. So somehow if that can be translated to students, or so that they know that their future of being able to communicate is well, the future is in their hands, in their
Yeah.
ability to be able to communicate.
Mhm.
And if ChatGPT helps them learn how to write in a different style, great. But their voices are only really going to be unique, and people are going to only want to hear something that is new and fresh.
Yeah, I agree. I like to ask these questions to every guest. So, one creative way you use it personally, professionally, and then where would you draw the line and never use it? And you could just answer them.
Oh, okay. I think professionally, I use it a lot in like tweaking emails. Like I'll do an email draft. I use it to be like a help me, right? As I'm like running through airports, and cleans it up for me a bit.
And then where would you draw the line and never ever use AI?
Or like for my own like as I said, I like to journal daily. I'm like, well, I wouldn't use it for that because it's not necessarily to be read by anyone else. It's just for me. I don't know if I'd like draw the line on that though.
Some
Yeah.
people have adamant answers.
What wouldn't people use it for?
One of my guests
Yeah.
asked a very good question. They said, would you use it to write an apology to someone? Would it make your apology less meaningful?
So for me personally, because I think words have generally been a challenge for me, where I know what I want to say, I know the intention, but finding the right word, I generally find challenging.
Same.
Would I use something where I'm like, ChatGPT, write an apology letter? No.
You
I mean, it
would.
would take more work to use this AI, because I would write it myself.
You would remix it.
That remix, DJ. I mean, my background is I dance. I've been mute like my whole life. I dance and then I do physics. No, both of those don't really entail words or writing or
But
vocalizing.
I have a question. So you were mute, you like your words mute for most of your life. Then you get up on stages and talk to thousands of people. Like I didn't even think about that till just now. How did you do that?
During my PhD, I realized I was like, this is a skill that I want to learn. And so I started giving talks to 6-year-olds. And then I graduated to the 7-year-olds and then the 8-year-olds. But it's been a long process of one, I was like, oh, okay, these 6-year-olds are going to be very forgiving of me.
Yeah.
And so it's just practice, right? And I started off with the 6-year-olds, the 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and then at those events it was like 5,000 people. Like the events have definitely changed, and dance, being on stage has helped, but then using words and vocalizing things and giving a talk has taken practice for sure.
Is there anything else that you want to add before we officially end the podcast?
Oh my gosh. No, just thank you so much. I can't wait to talk to you more about all the ways you've like changed assignments for the students. I'm like, I want to take your class. Please tell each one of the students that I was so touched that they've really, really made my whole day, week, year. I mean, I can't wait to see what they get up to and what they do in the future. And I'm 100% rooting for them. And I'm so excited, especially for all the Psy artists.
Is there anywhere we could find you? I know that my little ones were like begging for more videos. I told them to look
Oh.
on YouTube. I was like, she has plenty of videos. So where can people find you? Like, where are you most active?
So most active, I would say Instagram. My name, Merritt Moore, Merritt, Moore. And then I have some videos on YouTube. My website is merrittmoore.com. Twitter, I'm not very active, or X or whatever. Yeah.
Mhm.
But that generally, and then for those who are interested, on Instagram, it's called SciArt Party. And it's a great community. Every week on Sundays, we have an hour-long chat, and it's a wide range of students. There's some that are 13 up to, my friends were in their 30s. And it's a conversation about different people's projects. Like some are dancing with drones, some are using neurology and looking at Parkinson's with ping pong, and some are interested in aerospace. And like, it's just such an eclectic mix of people. And then I have a WhatsApp group with the Sci artists. So if there are questions, or it's a tight community where we're here to like help each other. That's one thing that I think perhaps your students or anyone who's listening might enjoy, finding a fellow Sci art community.
Oh, I didn't know you had that. That's really good, because I was trying to think of like how we could research more people similar to you. And now we have a whole community of them, and you just made our research really easy.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Generative Age. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Coming up shortly is the NiceGate Annual Conference, so if you're there, please stop by and say hello. Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Generative Age, powered by NiceGate. For a deeper dive, check out my new book titled, How'd You Guess? The Generative Age, now available on Amazon.
Our journey may pause here, but the conversation doesn't need to end.
Stay connected and informed by following me on social media at Alana Winnick and subscribing to my newsletter, all conveniently accessible on my website, alanawinnick.com.
Don't just listen, be a part of it. With your free NiceGate membership, you can join these live discussions, enroll in our free Generative Age NiceGate community, where you can share resources, ask questions, and collaborate with like-minded colleagues. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider leaving a review and telling a colleague or a friend.
We've got so much more in store, so be sure to join us next time for another exciting conversation. Until then, keep learning and keep growing in the generative age.